Greetings to all those who are still trying to understand whether we live in a serious country or are part of a tasteless tragic comedy. Today we're going to take a look at the circus of sovereignty, that magic tent where international laws appear and disappear depending on the script of the day. In addition, we're going to analyze the new episode of the never-ending series, The Illegal Campaign, that's not illegal if you paint it maroon. It turns out that, to absolutely no one's surprise, the ruling party has decided that the electoral calendar is just a decorative suggestion. Well, Morena has already set the machinery in motion for 2027, and they're doing it with the cynicism that already characterizes them, announcing no less than 6,600 informational meetings, which is the new way of referring to early campaign events. Because, of course, informing the population is their passion, and what better way to do it than traveling around the country right before the official electoral process begins? Let's get to it. Let's start with the chronicle of a shield foretold, or when sovereignty becomes the favorite place to hide. It seems that the National Palace's crisis manual has only one page, and the ink isn't even dry. Every time the political thermometer rises due to investigations that cross the northern border, the response is always the same. Interference, they shout from the podium while wrapping themselves in the flag as if it were an invisibility cloak. What we saw recently is a gem of political hypocrisy. Meanwhile, violence in the country seems to have its own independent agenda, and court files in the United States are starting to air the dirty laundry of former officials, like the case of the former Secretary of Security of Sinaloa, Gerardo Merida Sanchez. The reaction of Mrs. Sheinbaum has been, to say the least, pathetic. Ambassador Ronald Johnson had the audacity, still in a diplomatic and subtle way, to suggest that maybe, just maybe, they should cooperate against organized crime. It would be a better idea than arguing over who said what. The proposal is simple: cooperation. But for the official discourse, this is immediately translated as an attack on the self-determination of peoples, since the welfare flunky during yesterday's morning conference practically told him not to meddle in things that aren't his business, that it's not his job. Just like that, with that kind of nerve. It's fascinating and frankly ironic to see how the current administration clutches its pearls over the principle of non-intervention. When the ruling left has made commenting on other countries' political processes like Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia a national sport. When did solidarity between countries turn into imperialist interference? Aha! I know, at the exact moment when judicial investigations started pointing to their narco-politicians. I think what they haven't understood is that sovereignty isn't a shield against evidence. This is where the show gets interesting. Federal Judge Catherine Polk in New York has already confirmed that there is abundant evidence against Merida Sanchez, so consequently against everyone involved in the case. That includes Rocha, Moya, Insunza, and all those little angels that the United States government is still politely requesting. And here I ask you, do you really think that a district judge in the United States will stop just because someone in Mexico says the word sovereignty 3 times in front of a mirror and in front of a horde of clapping baboons? I don't think so. Si sobre todo no sirve para tapar el sol con un dedo. Sovereignty is a beautiful concept in civics textbooks, but in reality it doesn't erase crimes, it doesn't make evidence disappear, and above all, it can't hide the obvious. Using sovereignty as a shield against uncomfortable questions is not only an easy way out, it's an implicit confession of fear. Watch the most recent videos of the morning press conferences of the lady who runs the National Palace. That forced serenity, with bulging glassy eyes when faced with questions about the United States and the Sinaloa files, it looks more like an attempt to keep her composure while the house is burning down. It's the stance of someone who knows that the storm coming from the north isn't just a passing shower, but a hurricane that could end up implicating much higher levels of the chain of command. But she has to swallow it whole. The storm, I mean. If you're thinking of something else, ask Don Tarriba. Donald Trump, meanwhile, watches from the sidelines, waiting for the right moment to make them pay. We're in a game where the power difference is brutal, but they keep arm wrestling with one hand tied behind their back because of the government's own rhetoric. The trendy pretext, the favorite excuse to justify the unjustifiable, is the defense of sovereignty, as we've already seen. If you've ever wondered what sovereignty really means for the current administration, here's your answer. It's the wild card, perfect for filling plazas, parading Biostin crowds, and in the process, continuing open campaigning under the guise of a supposed noble cause. Since they know they still have thousands of trained fools and many others kept in line through extortion, they know it's not hard for them to keep filling plazas as they please. It's fascinating, and by fascinating, I mean alarming, how they want to sell us the idea that the country is under siege and that they and only they are the beacons of light who will save us from those imaginary threats of interference from the United States. But let's be realistic. This narrative is nothing more than a smokescreen. The real priority isn't defending the nation, but rather shielding their own interests and the troublesome figures they have in their ranks. And here comes the key player on the board, Ariadna Montiel. Ariadna Montiel, who at one time was the Secretary of Welfare, by the way, accused of corruption by members of her own party. Nothing surprising, but just something to keep in mind. Well, it turns out that now in her role as leader, Lareno, she not only controls the narrative, but also has intimate knowledge of the social programs registries. Coincidence? Of course not. The strategy is clear and shameless, to carry out 30 million house-to-house visits. Just imagine 30 million marengrasada. Imagine 30 million maroon vests knocking on doors, not to inform about public policies, but to make sure the vote machine is well oiled. It's the old reliable trick. Extortion disguised as outreach, where the social program conveniently becomes an electoral weapon. Either you vote for us, or you can forget about your government support. Funniest thing, if it weren't so tragic, is the stance on Ruben Rocha Moya. While the former Sinaloa Security Secretary is already appearing in court in New York in chains and facing real justice, in Morena the response is, "Let's wait," says Montiel, with that look on her face like she's holding in a fart. For them, keeping someone accused of ties to drug trafficking within their ranks is apparently a matter of loyalty, not ethics. The official response is a classic. No one is expelled because we're not anyone's punching bag. Translated into plain Spanish, we're not going to accept that the United States has evidence, because if we accept that, the roof will come crashing down on us. Basically, they equate defending a politician under scrutiny with defending the homeland itself. In other words, they insist that the citizens themselves take their side and defend their narco-politicians. Have you ever seen such cynicism? Just imagine for a moment if Peña Nieto had taken the same stance with Javier Duarte, just to mention one of so many former governors who ended up in prison. It's almost poetic that they dare to say that Mexico is a beacon for Latin America and that the president is a political role model. While the rest of the world sees what's happening with judicial processes abroad, here they prefer to laugh at the criticism instead of responding with arguments and seriousness. And when I say the rest of the world, I mean it literally, since the reach of social media is brutal. It's not just Mexicans criticizing Claudia Sheinbaum, but also people from different countries who are seeing the disaster we're living through. Just look and listen to the words recently spoken by Cayetana Alvarez regarding the much-lamented sovereignty that Ms. Clau keeps barking about. Here's an excerpt, in case you haven't heard it.
What remains of Mexican national sovereignty when millions of citizens have lost sovereignty over their own lives? In the face of drug trafficking, in the face of political power, in the face of economic dependence. Sovereignty is not a flag. It's not an impassioned speech against foreigners. It's not a historical reproach delivered in a morning press conference. Sovereignty starts with something more basic. Being able to go out on the street without having to ask a criminal for permission. Being able to open a business without paying extortion money. Being able to publish the truth without calculating its cost in blood. Being able to vote without someone having already decided the result in a windowless office. A country isn't sovereign just because no one invades it. It also has to prevent other powers from hollowing it out from within.
A direct punch to the jaw of little Miss Cool, no doubt. And that's why our brand new moron-in-chief, in a display of originality that leaves us all perplexed, has decided that social media is the new battlefield. According to the official narrative, these platforms are no longer the blessed networks that once helped win elections, but instruments of evil, some kind of alien conspiracy, or even worse, of the international right wing. The best part is the argument, Presichachis, in her eagerness to protect our minds from anxiety and excessive cell phone use. As if she were a concerned mother at a parent-teacher meeting. She suggests that maybe it's time to regulate freedom of expression, but not to censor. Of course not. It's pure love, pure genuine concern for our mental health, because of course, the last thing they want is to control what we see. What's fascinating here is the display of hypocrisy. While they lecture us about how we shouldn't be glued to our phones and how the algorithm is a dark tool that manipulates us, they forget to mention the big little irony. They themselves are experts at using those same tools to pull their own strings, because the populist rhetoric that confuses sovereignty with non-intervention is just a shield to hide an administration that a year later is still tied to the dictates of its predecessor. It's the same old story. When the speech doesn't convince, they blame the external enemy, the media, or now the algorithm, which magically shows us things we don't want to see. They say they want to open the debate to consider regulation. Of course, because if this government has shown anything, it's that when they say open the debate, it usually means let's find a legal way so that no one criticizes us. It's the basic manual of any regime that starts to feel uncomfortable with freedom of expression. If you don't like what the algorithm says, regulate the algorithm. And as if that weren't enough, I can't ignore that delicious sharp contrast, I'd say, between austerity and reality. While we're being asked to live with sobriety and not let ourselves be seduced by screens, we have the lineage of the Macuspana donkey enjoying life. It's contradiction made flesh, a farce that tells itself when you see who the real beneficiaries of this transformation are. Jesus Ernesto Lopez Gutierrez, also known in the underworld as Choco Chocoflan, as the guest of honor at the opening of the super luxury restaurant of the ultra snobby chef known as Salt Bae, who, by the way, also invited and served none other than Nicolas Maduro at one point. Where a beefsteak covered in gold leaf costs you 14,000 pesos. It's a real treat. Let's suppose he didn't pay anything for being invited, but just accepting that invitation already goes against his damn father's rhetoric. But you guys keep enjoying your kibble and your sandwiches with frutzi at the rallies, my chimpanchairos. They're good, aren't they? The real question that remains unanswered and that nobody in the government wants to answer is very simple. Why are they so afraid of a transparent investigation if there's nothing to hide? A republic that respects itself doesn't protect anyone. It lets justice do its work. But of course, that would require a level of democratic maturity that for now seems to be out of stock in the cabinet. I'll leave the final reflection to you. We want real sovereignty. Is it based on honesty and justice, or do we just want a government that uses the flag to cover up its omissions? The 2027 elections are just around the corner, and maybe there, and only there, we'll have the chance to change this poorly written script. Keep staying informed, keep questioning, and please don't let them convince you that seeing reality is an act of betrayal. The conclusion is simple. We're facing a script we already know by heart. Every time things get tough, every time reality comes knocking at the door, the answer is always the same. Conspiracy, foreign interests, evil algorithms. In short, dear cultured and knowledgeable audience, what we have before us is a display of pure self. They are preparing the ground, moving their pieces, and using the money and resources of the state to ensure that no matter what happens in the international courts, they continue to control the territory. The farce continues. The assemblies will take place, the door-to-door visits will go on. But that's why we are here. And when I say we, I mean you who are watching me and myself. When they come to your homes to tell you about the wonders of the transformation and ask for your vote, first record them, expose them, and then tell them to go fuck themselves. You know it better than anyone. The people are aware, or at least that's what they say while repeating the same narrative story. So should they put in people who... And what do you think? I'll read your comments. See you on Friday. Remember that you can make your donations via PayPal. You can find the information in the comments section. Thanks to you. This channel stays active. It's very important to subscribe, like, and press the bell to receive notifications whenever there's new content. Thank you.